welcome to another Taco Tuesday. Today is the 6th edition of the Taco Tuesday. I hope you guys are having hope you guys had a wonderful weekend. I missed you guys for a week. Early shout-outs for those who came in early. We have Yanlan, Ravi, Jason, Ayaka, Kat. Thanks for all coming in early and just chatting up a storm over there. I just want to tell you guys that anytime during this talk, you guys can pop in a question anytime you want. If you're inspired by anything in the talk today, just write the question down right away. And just to let you guys know, today is kind of special for me. So I will be giving away 2 bubble teas today too. So I just want to make sure that you guys understand, okay? I'm going to give you some hints along the way, right? This could be a hint. If I told you, hey, my name is Sky from Canada, that could be a hint. I don't know. But either way, 2 bubble teas will be given out today. So make sure that when we get to the question answer part, make sure your fingers are running fast. And we're going to pick a number. And whoever answers the question correct at that number will get the free bubble tea. All right. So what does that mean? Oh, it's time for the talk. Is there anything I'm missing? No, there's nothing I'm missing. Okay, so today's talk, we're going to talk about the story of Jonah. And the story is called Big Fish Story. Okay, so everyone, what you drinking? I have myself, my usual for Taco Tuesdays is a nice homemade iced latte. What are you guys drinking? Okay, here we go. So let's go check out the story of Jonah and the big fish story. Now, before we get into this, I need to tell you guys what a big fish story is. So I'm not sure about Southeast Asia or in Asia, but in America and Canada, we have something called a fish story, okay? And what a fish story, what does that mean? What does it mean, a big fish story? Is whenever people go fishing, they always come back and they exaggerate and say, oh my gosh, I caught this huge fish. Oh, and I was fighting with it for 3 hours. It was the size of a shark. And whenever anyone goes fishing, they come back with what you call fish stories. It's very, it's like almost unbelievable, okay? So today's talk is called Big Fish Story. Why? Because, guys, when you hear this story sounds so unreal. Like, it is literally, there's literally a big fish in this story too, right? But it is a big fish story. It sounds like a total exaggeration, but we're going to go into the story of Jonah. So, let's go into the story of Jonah. So who is this Jonah guy? So Jonah is this prophet, and one day God comes to Jonah and tells him, hey man, I want you to go over to that city. It's called Nineveh, and I want you to save the city. And then what does Jonah do? The prophet of God goes like this. No, I'm not going, right? And this is God. God is telling him to go, and Jonah's like, no, I'm not going. I don't want to go. So Nineveh is that way. He goes the exact opposite direction. He finds a bunch of sailors. They're not even Jewish. They're not even people who believe in God. There's these pagan sailors. He gets on their boat going the exact opposite direction, and then he goes down into the boat to go to sleep. While he's sleeping, a huge storm comes onto the ship. And all these pagan people are recognizing, oh, this got to be God. What do we do? So they're like, what do we do? Eventually Jonah gets up. He's awakened from the storm. And he's like, what's going on? He's like, oh, God is angry. What do we do? And Jonah knows it's him. And Jonah's like, it's me. Just throw me over. And they're like, what? Just throw me over the ship. So they take him and they throw him into the ocean, okay? So they throw him into the waters, and then the storm subsides. Crazy thing is, these people don't worship God, start worshiping God. Now, when Jonah goes into the water, what happens next? A big fish, probably a whale, eats Jonah, right? So Jonah now is stuck in the belly of a whale for like 3 days, and then he has this kind of moment with God, and he's like, all right, God. Okay, fine. I'll do what you want. So God, in his funny ways, in a humorous way, the fish vomits out Jonah. Jonah, he's vomited out with whatever vomit, fishes vomit. And then he cleans himself. Must smell really fishy, obviously. He's 3 days in the stomach. And then he heads off to the place that God told him to go, that place called Nineveh. So he ends up going to Nineveh, and he starts talking to the people, preaching to them for like 40 days straight. After the 40 days, everyone, including the king, everyone turns from their wicked ways, and then they all turn to God. And everyone's saved. That's the story. So yes, it is an interesting story because it is one of those big fish stories. And the thing that's kind of weird, and it's not just about the fish eating him. Okay, that's not what the whole story is about. What's weird about this story is everything is opposite of what is expected. Think about this. If you think of a natural stereotype of a prophet of God, do you think they obey or disobey? They obey, but Jonah's like, no, I'm not going, right? He's like, so the prophet says no to God. Then you have sailors who are pagans. They don't even believe in God. And then they recognize it's God making the storm. And then they worship God. Doesn't make it. This is like totally unexpected. Then he goes to the city, and the king and everyone there. You guys got to know this place. This is not in Israel. Nineveh is like over 1,000 kilometers away. It is in a place where they don't even know God. And yet, all of them change, including the king. It is very unexpected. All these stereotypical people in this story do exactly the opposite. The good guy does bad, and all the bad guys do good. So this is what you call one of those total fish stories. It's a total big fish story. Now, the one thing I do want to talk about, one of the themes that comes out, and this is something for all of us here. Like from this story, what can we get from it, right? But the first thing I do want to preface everything is, it kind of shows like the worst part of us. You know what I mean? It's like, most of us here are good people. A lot of people have faith. A lot of people believe in God. But it kind of shows like the worst part of us, doesn't it? Like Jonah's the prophet and he's going against God. And I'm sure, guys, we have had those times where God is telling us something and you're like, no, God, I'm not going to do it. I don't want to do this anymore, God. Right? And you complain and you grumble, God, why is this happening to me? And it's kind of, this is showing that in the Bible, even these prophets had these worst moments. Right? Let's look at Psalms chapter 107. It says, some sat in darkness, in utter darkness, prisoners suffering in iron chains because they rebelled against God's commands and despised the plans of the Most High, right? So the one thing is, it's one of those things where even here it talks about people despising God's plans, and this is the prophet of God. And we as people who believe in God, I know many of us do, a lot of times we don't do what God wants, and we know it. Right? We kind of like one of those, yeah, I know what's going to happen. Oh, come on, God. You've never judged me before, right? God, I don't want to do this. Oh, I'm so tired. Oh, I don't feel like it anymore. I don't want to do this. And what we see here is it's even the prophets. Even there was prophets that did this, right? Even when God told them, God tells you to do it. He's like, nah, I'm not going to do it. And in those moments, it's crazy. Because the prophet Jonah is the one that goes against God, but then all these people who shouldn't be following God are doing the right thing. And it almost feels like everyone is better than us at that moment, right? And all we do is complain and grumble, and you look at people who don't believe in God or people that you think that shouldn't be as good, and they're not complaining, but they're happy and they're positive, and you're just like, and it just kind of makes you more grumpy. Why are they so happy? So let's take a look at some of these life lessons, okay? There's a couple things, and this first one is the most important one. It's going to be the longest one. Long meaning probably like 3 minutes, right? So this first life lesson I want to show you through the story of God and Jonah is a story of a healthy relationship, okay? You got to understand what this means. What do you mean a healthy relationship? A healthy, loving relationship. You see, one of the biggest misconceptions we have about God, or with each other sometimes, right? Especially but you gotta think about God. God is supposed to be this great, amazing, he's God. And one of the things is, sometimes people get this really bad perception of God, like he's just gonna instantly judge you, your head's gonna explode, lightning strikes you, your body explodes, all the juice comes out of your ears and out of every orifice of your body. And it's interesting because it's like the moment you disobey God, death will come upon you, and this sin will take you all the way to the depths of the fiery hell, right? A lot of times we have these thoughts in our head. And we have such a small view of God, and we have to understand that this is showing us what a real relationship with God is like. Now, what I'm trying to tell you is this. If you look at Psalm chapter 103, verse 8, it says, the Lord is compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in love. But when you read the Bible, it's not like it's slow. It's like every other chapter is judgment. Every other chapter, people die. Every other chapter, God is angry, right? It's kind of like, gosh, it doesn't really feel like God is this type of God. But you have to understand this. The Bible can't write every single thing down. It just can't, right? It's kind of like the Bible's kind of like the social media back then. Basically, it only shows the really good parts, or it only shows the really bad parts. There's nothing in between. There's nothing in between because there's not enough room. You know, imagine how long the Bible would be if every single thing was written. It's like the first social media book, telling you all the good things, all the bad things, talks about destruction, talks about blessings. So you only hear two things. When people talk about God, you never hear about the middle stuff. You only hear about, oh, God bless me, or it's like, oh, I was judged. Oh, those people got judged. That's all you really hear. It's kind of like social media. Now, you have to understand this. God is patient, but it's hard to write about patience. Because imagine God waits for 400 years. What would you do for 400 years? And then God waited patiently for 400 years. And then it's going to be like blank pages. And it just says patience in brackets. Patience, 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 patience. Like you couldn't do that, right? But we have to be those that understand. Is that, yeah, there's many times that God waited so long before any of these judgments or punishments happened, right? And what we have to realize is God is, like in this relationship, He is so patient that in our hearts we think to ourselves, God should just instantly judge Jonah. Like Jonah should die. Like it shouldn't have been a whale. It should have been a shark that just like bit up like Jonah into like 20,000 pieces and spit him out. But instead, we see this patient God, really, really patient with Jonah from the beginning to the very end. What I want you to look at is, look at this relationship between God and Jonah. It's really interesting. Number one is, he rejects God in the very beginning and goes the exact opposite direction. The exact opposite. He gets thrown off a boat, right? And basically, you gotta think about this. He knew it was him. Basically, he would rather die than go to Nineveh. So he's like, okay, guys, just throw me off the boat. If he wasn't scared, he'd be like, oh, it's not me. But he was like right away, hey, man, it's me. It's my fault. I disobeyed God. It's like, oh, throw me off the boat. Like he wanted them to kill him. He'd rather die than go over there and do what God wants. He turns, and then he goes and eventually, in the whale's stomach, he says, God, you know what? I'll do what you want. So now it seems like everything's okay. But it's not, because at the end, you know what he says? Look at Jonah chapter 4, verse 2 and 3. This is what he says at the very, very end of the story. It doesn't sound like he's really happy. Look what it says at the very end. It says, he prayed to the Lord. Isn't this what I said, Lord? When I was still at home, right? He says, I knew that you are gracious and compassionate, slow to anger, abounding in love. You relent from sending calamity. Now, and look what he says at the end. Take away my life. Kill me now. Kill me now. Like this is the prophet of God. He says, I knew you would save them. That's why I didn't want to go. Can you imagine that? I knew you wanted to save them, so I would rather die now because you actually saved these people. What a crazy thought. But this is what the prophet of God was doing. But if you look at this relationship, it's amazing. It really is that God is patient, abounding in love, slow to anger. Because if it was us, we'd be like, fine, just die then. You know what? I'm not going to even send a whale. You're just going to die from like 1,000 piranhas going to just eat and bite all your flesh off. Like that's what we would do. You know, if it was me who was God in the beginning, the world would end after Adam committed the fall. It would be over by the first chapter, right? But when you look at this, it's really amazing. The relationship between God and Jonah, it really, really is amazing. Because, you guys got to think about this. When we talk about healthy relationships requires us to be patient with each other. Why? Because we all have these terrible times. We do. We have terrible times. Friends, family, everyone gets into that, into that mode where they're really moody, agitated by a bunch of things, and we get frustrated by them. And how many times have you said this about your friends and family? What's wrong with you? What the heck's wrong with you? Right? It's like we can't help, like, what the heck? What's wrong with this person? Right? Well, we know that something's wrong because they're not normally like this. But when you look at this healthy relationship, God is super patient. And one thing I really want all of us to is we have to all realize and recognize everyone has these terrible days. And sometimes it's terrible weeks. And honestly, guys, sometimes it's a terrible month. It's just like that sometimes. It just is. And because we've been through it, we should understand others, right? And if you look at God, if anyone has a right to be like really upset, it's God. This guy's disobeying God. But because of the healthy relationship between the two, we realize that there is this abounding love, and there is this eternal, like not eternal, but this long patience that God is willing to, he's understanding our situation also, right? It's just like this. You know, the thing that holds a relationship together is like when we have this patience that comes from love. It's like having a child. You love your child to death. If they keep making a mistake, it's okay, because it's your child, right? And they don't know any better. And because we know this, we will put up with our children for like 25 years, sometimes 30, right? And it's something that we have to understand, is this is how relationships build and become really, really healthy, right? And that's the very first thing I wanted to talk about. And the most important thing, I think, more than anything else, is the story of a healthy relationship between a real God, not this one that just judges and blesses, but we're looking at the in-between times now too, and God is also like this. So I hope you guys don't get into that mode, like you make a mistake, and you don't want to get scared of your friends that they're going to judge you right away. Those of you who have faith don't want to think that the moment you make a mistake, God is going to judge you. It becomes a very unhealthy relationship because it's based on fear. Second thing I want to talk to you today is called restoring your mind quickly. And this is something that's really, really important that Jonah couldn't do, but this is something that we need to learn how to do much better, especially in these moments. Yes, our minds get crazy sometimes. Yes, we get moody. Yes, we're in a bad mood. We don't know why. And it's so crazy because I know we've all gone through this, where we know we are wrong, and yet we will double down and we'll continue. We will continue in just that same mindset and path. We'll just keep going for some reason, whether it's immaturity, whether it's pride, whatever it is. Sometimes we just get into that. If you look at Proverbs chapter 28, verse 13, it's really, really good advice. It says, whoever conceals their sins does not prosper. So if you hold it in and you don't say that you're wrong, but you just keep holding it in, you're not going to prosper. You're not going to be successful. But the one who confesses and renounces them finds mercy, right? And it's true. Because when friends fight with each other, man, you got to fix it before it gets bad. Because I've seen some like really good friendships end over the stupidest things, like really dumb things, and the pride or whatever it is doesn't allow both of them to say sorry to each other, and you have these like friendship of years just destroyed in a second over something so dumb, right? What does that mean to restore your mind quickly? Everyone gets to the point. It's that moment where you know you're wrong, and you have to make a decision at that moment. Should I double down and keep going, even though I'm wrong? Or should I just, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. I'm being so stupid, right? Yeah. And by that moment, that's the moment, the moment you realize that you're wrong, right? Because that's the moment we have to make a choice. And at that time, you have to quickly change and restore your mind. That is the moment you have a chance, right? Because once you double down, it becomes harder and harder and harder, okay? Third thing and the last thing I want to talk about today is I want you guys to learn life through life. And this is something that's really, really important because when you guys read the very, very last bit of the story, it's very, very interesting because God is teaching Jonah through a life experience. It's really, really interesting the way that God teaches, but we're learning all the time. So what happens is, at the very end, he preaches for 40 days, but you know what? In his heart, he still thought to himself, there's no way these people are going to turn. So he goes up to the hill, and he like takes a bucket of popcorn and a Coke, right? Just ready to watch the fireworks show, like destruction come on the land and everyone dying, right? Because he's like, they deserve it. And what happens is, there's a vine that grows behind him and provides him shade. So Jonah is so happy that he has shade. But then at the same time, there's a worm that's eating the roots of that vine. And eventually, by the end of the day, the vine dies. And all of a sudden, this intense heat from the sun is coming down on Jonah's head. And then Jonah is just so angry. He's just like, on top of everything else going on, he's like, oh, I'm so angry I could die. Oh, why did this vine? Oh, and he's so angry. And what happens next is God speaks to him and says, hey, what's wrong, bro? And he's like, this stupid vine is like gave me shade and then it died. Oh, I'm so angry I can die. And God's like, all right, dude, let me tell you something. And he's like, what? What do you want to tell me? And God's like, you didn't even create this vine. And yet you're so angry you can die. And then God says, so how much more would I be angry if the people down there that I created died? And then Jonah's like, it's that aha moment, right? And this is learning from what? It's learning through life experience. When you go through life experience, one thing we do need to learn is all the experiences we go through are not just an experience. It's an experience you learn from, and it's an experience that you can learn about your life, what is happening in your life right now through these different types of experiences. If you guys hear, like even when I speak, not just the talks, I do other talks on campuses or in churches, whatever it is, I have so many stories, but by the end of the story, there's always something that we have to understand from that story, like, oh, that's what life is like. Life is just like this story I told you. Right? And I hope that everyone here too will realize you guys are getting tons of stories each and every day. And the only difference is we're caught up in just our own thinking and our minds are closed. And this is why we're kind of just stuck in our own area, not understanding that there's so much communication going on with us every day. Okay? So I really hope that you guys enjoyed today's talk. Today's talk was a story of Jonah, and it is a big fish story. Not just a big fish that ate him, but it's a story that seems unbelievable, very extravagant, because all these people doing the opposite things. But most importantly, the last thing is, big fish means what? Big fish also means a big person. And by the end of it, Jonah became a great person too, and he did exactly what God said, and he saved an entire city of 120,000 people. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Those of you who are joining us for the first time here, follow us on Espresso with Sky YouTube channel. Just click the subscribe and the notification bell, and every time we go live, you'll be notified by email. And on top of that, you'll be notified whenever a new video comes up. Remember, this is not just Taco Tuesday, the 6th Taco Tuesday. Before Taco Tuesday, there was what was it called? Lockdown Tuesday. And before Lockdown Tuesday, it was called Bread Talks, which means that we have probably over 20 different talks. And on top of it, we have our Bubble Talks there too, and the Bubble Talks is in 26, 27 talks over there too. Tons of stuff on that YouTube channel. Go ahead and subscribe and click the button. Those of you who'd like to support this ministry, come click on the Patreon button and you guys can support us. And then also Saturdays, every Saturday 1 p.m., we have group Bible lessons, very, very small groups. Fill in the sign-up form, and we'll email you the Zoom link. Really interesting and fun. We have people from everywhere, from Hong Kong, Indonesia, Philippines, Singapore, Malaysia, Japan. They're from everywhere. So you guys can come and join us. There'll be smaller groups, and we'll be able to have a really, really good and even deeper time, right? So let's spend this time taking a sip, and we'll go into the question and answer. All right, here we go. Here we go. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the questions today. Let's start with the first question, all the way in Petaling Jaya in Malaysia. It is John. And John says, how can you restore your mind quickly after knowing you're wrong? Okay, how do you restore your mind quickly? Okay, so this is the one that's very interesting because one of the hardest parts is when you're going in a certain direction, in the beginning, you're not doing it because you think you're wrong. In the beginning, you're doing it because you think you're right. Okay? It's true, right? You wouldn't go a direction because you knew you were wrong. You go in that direction because you really feel that's right. But what happens is, the most important time is a time when you finally realize you're wrong. That's the key moment, John. More than any other time, it's that key moment when you finally realize, oh, wow, oh, I understood it wrong, right? At that moment, we have to be the ones that have to make the right decision. Now, how can you restore your mind quickly? It's not an easy thing if you've been always doubling down and going the other way, right? Learning how to take the other route or the better route is something that you have to exercise all the time. And I would say one of the best things to do to exercise is you need to be comfortable with saying sorry. Like, you have to be comfortable with it. Because I know a lot of people are uncomfortable saying they're sorry. Like, oh, okay, I'm sorry. Okay, so that's it. Right? Yeah, and we have to get used to, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I didn't mean this. Oh, wow, no, I didn't know. And this is one of the ways you can start kind of building that muscle. Because if you're someone who's used to and getting, strengthening that part of you of apologizing and saying sorry, then when the moment comes, it's a lot easier for you. But a lot of people struggle because they're not used to saying sorry. They're not used to telling someone I'm wrong kind of thing, right? And that's something that we have to practice a lot. And it's going to creep up on us. And it's that moment when you're wrong, you got to just say you're wrong. And you got to say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. Oh, that's my mistake. Okay? Thank you, John, all the way over there in PJ. Let's go to the next question. Next question over there is Shelly. Shelly in Singapore. And the question is, how do we control ourselves when the worst part of us comes out? Right? How do you control yourselves when the worst part of us comes out? So it is one of the parts I talked about is, yes, when you look at the story of Jonah, it's when the worst part of us comes out. So how do we control ourselves in that moment? Okay? Now, one thing that each individual is going to have a different way of dealing with that worst part. Okay? And I would have to say is some people, like for instance, people who are like strong introverts, they want to be alone. And if you know yourself really well, some people just need to be alone. It's better to be alone than to lash out at tons of people, right? It's better to be alone, okay? And I know that there's other people too that are a little bit more of an extrovert, okay? And if you're an extrovert, one of the things that happens is you need someone you trust you can talk to, right? You really need someone you can trust and someone that you could just say, hey, this is what happened, and then the person could just kind of calmly tell you like, hey man, I think that's a little bit wrong. Do you know you're right or wrong? Yeah, I know I'm wrong. So you probably should say sorry. Yeah, I should. Right? And it really depends on how much you know yourself really well. Right? And it's something that you have to really understand. You got to understand yourself really well. Some people need to talk to someone. Some people need to be alone. Right? But regardless of anything else, if you are someone of faith, even before you talk to someone and even before you get into your mind while you be alone, for those of you who have good faith, well, just faith in general, it's really, really good for you to just sit down and pray first, right? Just calm yourself down, get yourself back into God's presence, and really think, okay, what is going on? And then you can actually think much more clearly, right? So if you guys, some of you out there might not have faith, you can pray or you can meditate just to calm yourself down. You want to get yourself out of that emotional state, because in that emotional state it's really, really, really difficult. Okay? All right, let's go over to the next question. Next question is Tan Ling in Kuala Lumpur. Okay. You mentioned about learning life through life. Okay, cool. Since many things happen every day, how do we know what are the lessons we should realize and learn? Oh, perfect. Okay, good question, Tenling. What are the questions we should learn for sure? One thing that you cannot realize from something that is not striking. Now, striking means what? Striking means like to strike that's to strike. Now, it doesn't mean someone's going to slap you in the face, right? It means that what you're going through has to strike your mind. It can't be something that's kind of like medium, not so emotional. Like all my realizations are coming from situations where I'm like, what? Right? You're either shocked, you're super angry, super sad, upset, you feel betrayed, just tons of different things, right? These are things that we have to understand is you're not going to realize from things that are just normal parts of your day. Because I'm going to tell you right now, 95% of your day, you're not going to remember. You're just not. There's nothing exciting about it. That's why if someone says, what happened last week in your life? Most people are like, oh, I don't remember. Why? Most of the stuff that we're going through life is on autopilot. Right? When you drive, sometimes you don't even know you're driving, but you're driving. And your mind's just taking over. But you have to realize it's those very striking moments. Right? Those moments you have to start thinking about it. Right? In those moments you're thinking, why am I so angry about this? And this is when you start to actually realize more deeply and have a life lesson through life, right? And that's why my biggest thing whenever I'm helping people and helping them to train in these situations to help to receive some type of revelation, God is revealing something to you or something that you're realizing about life, it's usually almost like more than 95% of the time it's going to be in a situation where it's very emotional because you remember it. You know the feeling. What made you feel that way? What are the steps that led you to that point? And it makes you realize much more deeply about that situation. So Tenling, for sure, my first suggestion to you is you have to look at the things in life, even looking back now, the things that have strong emotional, that have a strong emotional output in your life. From those things, you start thinking deeper about it, then you're going to start realizing more things about life. And if you want to figure out, well, what is God saying to me? If you're someone of faith, it sounds like the worst answer, so I don't know what to do. Pray about it. And you're kind of like, I've heard that so many times. But yeah, you do. If you have a real solid, strong, deep prayer, you'll start to have realizations, and you'll start to have these epiphanies like, oh, I never thought about that, right? So a lot of times people don't have these deeper prayers, and this is why they don't reach that state where they can hear God speaking to them, okay? So let's go into our birthday giveaway, because it was my birthday on Sunday. And I'm going to have this birthday question for 2 free bubble teas today. 2 free bubble teas. The question is, which country was I born in? I gave the answer before. Which country was I born in? Okay? Which country? Go ahead, write it down as much as you can, and we're going to move into the next question. Last question today is from Hannah, over there in Japan. Last question says what? Last question says, I have the tendency to cut off communication to people I have hurt because of fear of committing mistakes again. Is this a healthy way to move on? Okay, so I have the tendency to cut off communication to people I have hurt because of fear of committing mistakes again. Is this a healthy way to move on? And the answer is no, it's not very healthy, right? Cutting off communication is probably the least healthy thing you can do. Why? Because the moment you cut off communication, there's no more information. Now, what do you mean information? For instance, if I hurt someone, if I cut off communication, what happens is I don't know why they're hurt, right? I don't know why they're hurt. I don't know what I did. I don't know what's the situation or what's going on in their life. Was it maybe they're just extra sensitive because something else happened in their life at that moment, right? Yes, of course we don't want to make the same mistake again, right? But you don't want your relationships to be based on fear. The fear of making a mistake. It's not a very healthy relationship. Relationships should be built on trust. Trust meaning that even if I hurt you, we can talk about it, we get over it, and there's not going to be this massive judgment. And even if I make another mistake, it's okay, and we're always going to talk about it. Communication is the first thing that should happen after hurting someone, right? You don't want to get into, because you got to think about this. Even when it comes to faith, when I talk to a lot of people when it comes to faith too, it is super unhealthy to cut off communication with God just because you sinned or made a mistake. It's actually the wrong way to do it. If you think about it, imagine your husband, Hannah, after they hurt you once, they never talk to you again. Would you want that? You being the wife of your husband hurts you, but would you be in your heart thinking, wow, I hope they never talk to me again, even though we live together and we're married? No, because if you're someone who really, really loves your husband, you want to work it out and you want things to be restored and have a stronger relationship and move forward, right? It's the same thing with everything else, right? To cut off communication is the assumption that they don't want to talk to you anymore. Right? You don't want to build your relationships over fear. A relationship should be built on love and trust, right? And we want to be those people that can really understand in a much, much better way. Like, oh, that's what I did. Because once you understand this about yourself, if you don't communicate, you actually have a higher chance of doing it to hurting someone else. You have a higher chance of doing it to another person. You have a higher chance of hurting the same person over again when you finally get the guts to talk to them again, right? Communication is it's the thing that should never break. Whether it's with God, your friends, your family, anything else, the communication is the last thing. It's always like the very, 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 very last of all last things. It should be the first thing, okay? All right, thank you, Hannah. Let's go into today's, what do we call it? Today's giveaway. Okay. Today's giveaway, what number do I have here? The number I have here is 9, right? So the person who answered the question in 9th place will get today's bubble tea. Today's winners are, we have Brigitte Salim in Indonesia. And on Facebook, we have Anna Oriol from the Philippines. There's always someone winning from the Philippines every single week. Congratulations, Anna and Gita. Make sure you email us on espressowithsky@gmail.com. We're going to put that up here. Make sure you text us or email us. And on top of that, make sure you take a picture and please send it to us as soon as possible. Everyone have a wonderful and amazing night. It is only Tuesday. The week is just beginning. I hope you guys will have an awesome time, and we'll see you again next week. Or some of you will see you on Thursday for Bubble Talk. Or some of us will see each other on Saturday at 1 p.m. for the Bible lessons. All right, everyone, have a wonderful day, and we'll see you guys again. Bye-bye.
We believe in the same God, but we are on different levels.
Hey.